In mediation, I was an M&A lawyer doing public and private mergers and acquisitions, and probably the largest deal that I did was at Slaughter and May, where I did a £4 billion merger between Hilton International and Hilton US. When I'd been at the bar for about 3 years, having come from a corporate deal-making background, I noticed that in the mid-market there was a real problem, and that was that I couldn't resolve issues for my clients effectively, mainly because they'd often spent so much on the process and the lawyers that it was worth more than the dispute. And so it was really difficult to settle things, which is something I felt passionate about doing. And so I really started a mediation to try to resolve that gap that people in the mid-market found, and to try to improve accessibility to justice through using technology. We were asked to support the Federal Court and the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and also to run the first ever global moot, being a law competition on the platform, which doesn't sound very big, but basically we had 2,000 people come onto the platform from 30 countries in 10 minutes, and ran over 500 hearings in the course of 5 days, which had never been done before. What all that meant was, for me personally, I literally just worked every day. So I worked for 50 to 60 days in a row prior to Easter in 2020. And then after that, continued to work 6 or 7 days a week on and off for the next 2 to 3 years. There was at one stage I decided that 6 days was really the maximum that I should be doing. But the impact on my family was enormous, because we've got 2 teenage children, and it was really hard. I guess I would say that being a founder is not for the faint-hearted, and particularly being a sole founder. A lot of people ask me how I've done that, and sometimes I genuinely don't know the answer. I guess I've done it by having an amazing team, and the team and the investors really are what has made this journey worthwhile, no matter what the outcome. The hardships range from just general financial pressure when you're trying to start a business and bootstrap it, through to just the sense of it never ending and there always being something else that you need to manage. And then I'm now a tech founder, so I've sort of had the triple whammy of male-dominated industries, which I actually really quite enjoy. I don't mind it because I'm used to it, but what I do notice is that it's still a problem. It's still a problem for women, and we do endeavour at Immediation to do something about that. We try to effect change through affirmative action policies, both in terms of our hiring and also the way that we give work to arbitrators and mediators when we receive it. And I tell the team, in particular the technology team, that they need to proactively look for diverse hires, and that's something that we feel very, very passionate about. We are the first and only dispute resolution ecosystem on the market. And what I mean by that is it's an online dispute resolution offering that really covers the field. So we are trying to provide a technology solution for courts and also for dispute resolution providers out of court, as well as improving processes. So not just digitizing old processes, but also transforming the system to try to move it along into the next century, and by that providing accessibility and sustainability in dispute resolution that is really quite new. We also provide services, so everything from the provision of mediators and arbitrators through to actually wholesale system change through early facilitation and triage of disputes for government bodies and others. So I think we're the only really comprehensive offering in the dispute resolution, online dispute resolution market. When I started Immediation, there were a number of things driving me. It was a push and a pull. And part of the push was I just can't live with this system and not do anything about it. And also the pull was, if I've had this idea and I don't do something about it, I'm going to feel really annoyed with myself later when it happens, because it was obvious to me that the system would digitise. So there was both of those factors, but Also, as a parent, I thought this is possibly the most important thing I can do, which is stop people flying around the world to resolve disputes, because that's incredibly inefficient, both from a financial perspective and also from a carbon perspective.
And this is yet another example of a fascinating entrepreneur, a woman who is out there in the corporate world in a male-dominated environment, branching out into IT from law. Laura, welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. What a fascinating story. I can't wait to hear more. Thank you.
Thank you, Gertrude. And it's great to be speaking to you in Melbourne. It's great.
Now, you have lived an interesting life. You spent many, many years as a corporate lawyer, and now you've broken into the tech field, combining your law skills with technology. Where did this idea come from? Was this because of the COVID pandemic? Or was it an idea that you had all along that was brewing and then the timing was right?
Good question, Gertrude. So I launched in 2017 prior to the pandemic. And I guess one interesting thing, particularly for the American audience, that may be different about our legal system is that we have two types of practicing lawyers. One is a solicitor, which is more of a large law firm lawyer who also conducts litigation. And in my case, I was a transactional lawyer in Melbourne and London. And then I became the second type of lawyer, which is called a barrister, an in-court advocate, and a trial and appellate attorney. So I really went from one type of law to an entirely different stream as an advocate. And it was really the combination of those two skill sets, both business and then litigation, that led me to the idea and the realization that the dispute resolution and court profession needed to digitize, and that there were a lot of inefficiencies, both financial and also environmental inefficiencies in the way we were conducting business. Ironically, this was actually in 2017 prior to the pandemic. And so the first 2 years I was evangelizing really about why, from the client's perspective and from the community's perspective, we needed to use technology. And then the pandemic arrived, and all of a sudden a very resistant profession started to listen. They started to listen because they had no choice but to keep operating through technology like ours. And so it became, I guess, evident to a lot of people that things that I'd been saying were true, and that now we're in a phase where we need to continue to build on the amazing benefits of the technology transformation that's taken place in the industry over the past 3 years.
Now, I know that 4% of VC funds go towards female startups. What were the challenges that you faced in building this technology? Was it difficult? Did you manage to enroll investors quickly and easily? And what tips do you have for another female who's trying to break into this?
I seem to have in my skill set the ability to raise money. And I think it's a combination of being an advocate and also being a business lawyer, in that I understand very complex corporate finance ideas, and then I can translate them into a message because I've been trained as a barrister. So I think the combination of those things meant that it wasn't difficult for me to raise as a skill set. Is one that I found came relatively naturally. What is difficult about raising is that period between when you have the idea and then the execution of the idea. So you need the funding, particularly for a woman often. That's a rash generalization, but is often the case that you may not necessarily have your own independent wealth to the same level that perhaps your male counterparts may have. And so therefore you need that money in order to execute your idea. And so there's a gap. In order to be able to prove its value proposition, you need to have done some work. And sometimes, or often, you may need to raise money in order to prove that it can work. So getting over that hurdle was very difficult. And I had support of a team and others, but ultimately I had to convince people that there was a market, that there was a value proposition, and that I was the right founder to deliver that. In terms of hints for other people, I think the thing that I probably didn't do enough of, and I wish I had done, is research the capital raising industry more. I didn't really understand the difference between venture capital and growth equity, for example. Even though I'd lived it, I understood it superficially, but I didn't understand it in the sense of what it meant for me as a founder, what proportions of equity I should retain, and the way that Series B through E works. I didn't understand enough about that. And so I probably made some early mistakes in the way that we took capital that are still playing out now in terms of our cap table, probably not being as consolidated as it ought to be. The good news is that because I'm a sole founder, I'm in the same position as I would have been had I had multiple founders. And so it all works out in the end. Hopefully that's of some use, Gertrude.
Wow. No, that's very, very useful, because I'm actually at that point myself in trying to raise funds for the application for our movement. And I'm facing those kind of challenges, the lack of knowledge, the lack of skills. Now, throughout your career, you seem to be somebody who is always forging forward, breaking barriers. What has been the biggest challenge for you when you were in that corporate setting? And how did you overcome those challenges to get to who you are right now?
I think in the corporate setting, at the time when I had my first child, I came back from London and we had our first child, and nobody in the mergers and acquisitions market, generally speaking, was doing part-time work in large transactions. And so I was at that time faced with needing to try to persuade large law firm partners that was the right thing for me and it was the right thing for them. So this is around the 2006, 2007 mark. And that was really hard because it was the first time when I realized that the fact that I was a woman was going to impact on my career. I faced that challenge actually by moving firms and finding one that I thought would be more open-minded and also being incredibly flexible in the way that we ran our lives. And I was fortunate to have support of my husband, who left his role in the same type of job to take an academic career, which made it more flexible. And also just realizing that I had to learn the skill set of balancing everything. So that was sort of the first challenge. Once I'd got through that, first child and second child in the early days, I felt freer to then get on and have the career that I really wanted, which was to be my own independent advocate. And in Australia, when you are a trial or appellate attorney as a barrister, you're a sole trader. So that was also very challenging because I didn't necessarily fit the mold of people who go to the bar. We call it going to the bar out of a large firm, because I'd been an M&A lawyer and I was also a woman. So that came with its own interesting challenges of making sure that I could stand on my own 2 feet, which I did. I guess the main message that I would give is, well, 2 messages. One is of support and the need really to have one parent. When in my situation, I had to have the other parent be able to drop everything for the children. And that was what enabled me to do what I did. And the other was the realization, probably in mid-pandemic when I was really working hard, that if I didn't look after myself, my own mental and physical well-being, that everything would crumble and that everything depended on me being fit and healthy. And so I prioritized my own personal fitness and mental health above everything, above work, above kids, above family, which sounds very selfish, but actually what it did was transform us into a much stronger, better position, because I knew that I could withstand the pressure that I was under much better when I was at peak performance. And it's not to say it's perfect, but it certainly made a massive impact for us.
Yeah, a lot of women forget to put the oxygen tank on themselves first. We're so busy trying to look after the children, look after the family, go to work. And I think that's a real wake-up call to all of us to remember that unless you are vibrant and healthy and your mental state of mind is good, you're no use to anybody else. So
that's right.
Take me into the future a little bit in terms of where you see this platform going and where you see your career going as well?
We envision that all disputes will be on our platform. And so what that means is we're trying to transform justice from both ends. What I mean by that is we're trying to make the court system better and more efficient and faster and able to be accessed by people more readily, because there are billions of people who do not have effective access to court systems. The problem I have with that is that if people can't access the court system, it means that it undermines the rule of law. If the court's only there for rich companies and wealthy individuals, then it's not really there at all. So that's point one. Point two is that we're trying to resolve disputes more effectively outside of court, again, to decrease pressure on the court system. What all of that means is that we're driving for all disputes to be resolved on a singular best practice platform, which is ours, and to make sure that all of the things that clients and lawyers need are dealt with effectively. So an example of that is to make sure that client-lawyer privilege is protected in the way that we undertake and manage the technology, so that there's no risk of breach, and we do that in quite a unique way. So I guess that's the future for us, is making sure that we can transform that system effectively, holistically, and making sure that it's client-centric, so the community is at the heart of everything that we do, and also that we look after the legal profession. What that means for me personally is I've probably got, a good 5 or more years of entrepreneurship ahead of me. I'm building a terrific team of executives. The last year has been absolutely transformative because I suddenly have experts at the head of about 8 key functions in the business, which is enabling me to step away from the day-to-day operations and up into the strategy, which is where I really like to be. I'm not anywhere near ready to have a sort of portfolio career yet. So I'm hoping that I can really enjoy that journey over the next 5 or so years.
I love that, because a lot of times we get caught in the trenches of doing the work and we don't build the team around us to support us. So you're getting to that point where you can work on your business and not in it, correct?
That's right. And I see my job as if I'm most effective, I'm actually finding people that are smarter than me and enabling them. That's really the entire job. And as soon as I realized that and was able to afford the people who were able to deliver that, then everything changed. That's another thing about the early fundraising, is that you can't really afford the people who have the skill sets to do what needs to be done effectively. So you're sort of scrambling around, whether you're a technical founder or a subject matter expert founder like me, that there's always a gap that you have, and you're scrambling around trying to plug the gap and sort of beg, borrow, or steal the expertise. So once you kind of scramble through that period and get to a point of stability, things feel much easier, even though they're still hard.
It's just a challenging chicken and egg situation, right?
It is. And particularly for, I think that the story of the female founder who raises capital on their own is very rare. Mainly because if you're also running your second career. So I practiced as an advocate until February this year. So I had 4 years, 4 and a bit years of doing 2 full-time jobs. And so if you have that and you're a full-time parent and you don't have any relief from any of those, then that's why I think for women it just becomes an almost impossible hurdle to overcome. So you've got to have the other person who can help you.
I love that. Now, who would you say was the biggest influence in your life?
Honestly, probably my father, who's no longer with us, just because largely his work ethic, both of my parents, but mainly him, in the way that he sort of taught me about how to do something properly has really driven me. It's just always the mantra that I live by. And then there have been a number of very important, I have to say, actually largely men, older men that I've been lucky enough to work with along the way in law firms and at the bar, who have helped shape the way that I see myself, and given me, I guess, insight and courage into what I was good at, and has enabled me to sort of then take the steps that I needed to take in my own professional self to be able to step into the various roles that I've had over the past 5 to 7 years in particular, because you have to break out of what you're told, what the stories are that you're told about yourself in order to become an entrepreneur, because we're very attached to the stories of being a good girl and being a professional and doing everything right by everybody and making sure that we say and do the right things and don't ruffle any feathers. And in order to actually disrupt and take a chance and say, I'm going to do something else, and actually largely I think that things in this profession could be better, I had to really break down that internal stereotype of myself. So I'm just going to reject it. And it took a lot of encouragement, I guess, and belief in myself, largely forged by relationships with others, to be able to step into that role and just let go of all the old shit that I was carrying around about what good women do and what good women don't do.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we are our own worst critics. That little voice in our heads that run us, the things that we think we should be doing, or the expectations society puts on us as women as well. So
Exactly.
I'm really glad that you've brought that up, to just make women aware that that little voice in your head, you have to quiet it down. And again, your ego is trying to protect you from getting hurt, from making a mistake. And what I've learned to do with the little voice is just say, thank you, I hear you, but I've got to do this. And then you just forge on and really just start believing in yourself.
Well, the patriarchy is so ingrained in us, I think, that we don't even realize it's there. So a lot of the messaging that we tell ourselves, we don't even realize was put there by our environment. And so we think it's actually us telling ourselves what we should and shouldn't do, but it's just been put there for us. And once you start to question those assumptions, there's another podcast. I'm not sure if you're aware of the one called Unfuck Your Brain, which talks a lot about the patriarchal assumptions that we're raised with and how to start recognizing when they come up. I found that incredibly useful, and how to start giving yourself new messages when you hear them. But you have to tune into the fact that they're there first and realize that that's what's happening, or at least it was for me. It may not be the same for everyone, in which case go those women, but it certainly was for me.
Yeah, I think it's very subliminal, and you're very not conscious that it's there for most women. I totally agree with you there. So now, if I could take you into the future, you're now 100 years old. You're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your dogs, your cats, your grandchildren. And if you could look back on your life and the amazing things you've achieved and have a conversation with the older you, based on how you're living your life right now, what would you say to that wise woman?
I'm looking forward to that. I think about that quite a bit, because I feel like I'm living my best life now, and there's lots of reasons for that. It's difficult. I think what I would say to myself is, aren't we glad that we did the things, that we took the risks and we had the fun and we lived our life to the fullest, because, we only had one shot at it and we did the best we could. It wasn't always perfect. But we had a lot of fun along the way. And the thing that is of the most inherent value to me at the moment is not the entrepreneurship and the potential of a large exit or any of that. It's actually the team, the relationships that I have with my team, the fact that I created the team. The team is broader than just the executives. It's the shareholders and the investors and the community that we have. And that's where I derive my joy from. And so I'm very glad that I gave myself the opportunity to experience all of that.
Now that you are at this point, who should be contacting you if they want to get more information about this new technology? How can people spread the word so that we can get this to go much further afield than it is already?
So the people that can really make an impact for us are partners of litigation firms or managing partners of any type of firm, people with a responsibility within a law firm who have the ability to direct us in the right way. And that's in any market, particularly focused on Australia, New Zealand, the US and the UK markets, which we're really focused on right now. Anyone who works inside court administration or dispute resolution, such as arbitral or mediation centres, we are talking to those all around the world. And also general counsel or in-house counsel of any kind who would like to find out about how we can make dispute resolution more effective for them and their corporate, and take pressure off the general counsel team. We'd love to hear from any of you.
Fantastic. Now I've got your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So if anybody out there is listening in, please get in touch with Laura's firm and let's help get this platform to reach more people, create better lives for both those people who are working in the law profession and those needing their help as well. So Laura, is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't?
I guess what I would say to women who are thinking about a journey like this, it's a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, I would say, you know, if you have the idea, you need to try to go for it and overcome the fear that will inherently be there inside you, and don't let that be the thing that stops you. On the other hand, I would say you need to be prepared for the fact that it's relentless. It doesn't go away. And once you've taken investors' money, it's a one-way street. And the only way through that is to succeed or fail and to keep going until one of those two things happens. So it's just about being aware that it's not very glamorous and that you've got to have the support in place. But if you've got all of that, then you just have to go for it and you won't look back, particularly if you are a woman who's been in a service industry and feels constrained by the limitations that places on you. I think entrepreneurship is a fantastic journey for people like that.
Thank you for this interview, Laura. Thank you for the inspiration that you bring to the world of women in business. If anybody out there is wanting to see how to do this, we got so many tips, so many ideas. I'm currently in a cohort that's teaching me to get investor ready, the jargon, understanding what it means to be in front of this world. It's not that easy. And what you said at the end is also really pivotal, that when you do take on funding and you bring on investors, it's almost like selling part of your soul. So be prepared that the baby is not your baby anymore, right?
That's right.
You have to let go. You have to let go of some of that control. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this interview. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Be back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have an amazing day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Gertrude. That's lovely.
When I'd been at the bar for about 3 years, having come from a corporate deal-making background, I noticed that in the mid-market there was a real problem, and that was that I couldn't resolve issues for my clients effectively, mainly because they'd often spent so much on the process and the lawyers that it was worth more than the dispute. And so it was really difficult to settle things, which is something I felt passionate about doing. And so I really started a mediation to try to resolve that gap that people in the mid-market found and to try to improve accessibility to justice through using technology. We were asked to support the Federal Court and the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and also to run the first ever global moot, being a law competition on the platform, which doesn't sound very big, but basically we had 2,000 people come onto the platform from 30 countries in 10 minutes and ran over 500 hearings in the course of 5 days, which had never been done before. What all that meant was, for me personally, I literally just worked every day. So I worked for 50 to 60 days in a row prior to Easter in 2020. And then after that, continued to work 6 or 7 days a week on and off for the next 2 to 3 years. There was at one stage I decided that 6 days was really the maximum that I should be doing. But the impact on my family was enormous because we've got 2 teenage children, and it was really hard. I guess I would say that being a founder is not for the faint-hearted, and particularly being a sole founder. A lot of people ask me how I've done that, and sometimes I genuinely don't know the answer. I guess I've done it by having an amazing team, and the team and the investors really are what has made this journey worthwhile, no matter what the outcome. The hardships range from just general financial pressure when you're trying to start a business and bootstrap it, through to just the sense of it never ending and there always being something else that you need to manage. And then I'm now a tech founder, so I've sort of had the triple whammy of male-dominated industries, which I actually really quite enjoy. I don't mind it because I'm used to it, but what I do notice is that it's still a problem. It's still a problem for women, and we do endeavour at Immediation to do something about that. We try to effect change through affirmative action policies, both in terms of our hiring and also the way that we give work to arbitrators and mediators when we receive it. And I tell the team, in particular the technology team, that they need to proactively look for diverse hires, and that's something that we feel very, very passionate about. We are the first and only dispute resolution ecosystem on the market. And what I mean by that is it's an online dispute resolution offering that really covers the field. So we are trying to provide a technology solution for courts and also for dispute resolution providers out of court, as well as improving processes. So not just digitizing old processes, but also transforming the system to try to move it along into the next century. And by that, providing accessibility and sustainability in dispute resolution that is really quite new. We also provide services, so everything from the provision of mediators and arbitrators through to actually wholesale system change through early facilitation and triage of disputes for government bodies and others. So I think we're the only really comprehensive offering in the dispute resolution, or online dispute resolution market. When I started Immediation, there were a number of things driving me. It was a push and a pull. And part of the push was I just can't live with this system and not do anything about it. And also the pull was, if I've had this idea and I don't do something about it, I'm going to feel really annoyed with myself later when it happens, because it was obvious to me that the system would digitise. So there was both of those factors, but also as a parent, I thought this is possibly the most important thing I can do, which is stop people flying around the world to resolve disputes, because that's incredibly inefficient, both from a financial perspective and